Hey Jeff,
Denise,
how you doing?
good.
Who's that ugly guy that just?
Ty needs to
Oh, that's
shave.
Ty. Oh, sorry, Ty. I
Hello.
thought,
Needs to
I thought
clean
it was
up his act a little bit.
I thought it was the Unabomber that he's got on. I apologize.
Denise, I told the mayor I'm gonna have to bail out here a little after 6:30 tonight
Okay.
to head to get into a basketball game for my daughter. So
That's Ty. Oh, sorry, Ty. Who do they play tonight, Jeffrey?
Juab Wasps.
Wob Wasps.
Yep.
Okay, I'm admitting Daryl into the meeting. And the mayor.
Dave joining us? Denise, is Dave joining us?
Yes, but he's not here yet. He did register. You snuck in there, Eric. There's Daryl.
This is Daryl. Do you all have audio?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any audio.
Mayor, do you want to get started?
Yeah, we can start.
Okay.
I just sent David a text, see if he is aware of starting 5:15. Okay. I'll clear this work session to order, come to order. The only agenda to start the work session is the rezone proposal that's before us tonight.
There we go. I got it.
Start work session so that we can just discuss that as a council and any questions, thoughts, ideas you have. Let me go through, if I can, now around the full meeting, go through like I did before, the kinds of things that are up for discussion tonight. On this rezone, is a change of zoning. We're not concerned with concept map. Concept map is not a part of the rezone. Rezone, what it does is establishes lot size minimum. And then the next step would be for someone to come back, the owner of that property come back with proposed plot plan that would fit that particular zoning. With that said, the current zoning is agriculture, which is 5 acres, which is 5 acre lots. The general plan, however, has it set as low density residential. In our ordinance, low density residential is single family residential, which has 3 different options. According to the ordinance, they're all appropriate, according to the ordinance. That being R110, R112, and R120, which are all 3 ordinance allowed zones for the single family residential. Tonight, just the thing that we need to discuss and come up with is what we would determine that area should be zoned at. Couple of things to think about. You can think about the uses in the area, as well as the zoning in the area. We've gone through that before. I think all of you have had some different emails, different conversations, different phone calls, different presentations from both parties dealing with this piece. Down there currently, as you looked at that, there are some areas zoned R110, some zoned R120. However, within those zones are different uses. The use currently is not necessarily coincide with the current zoning. Okay, with that being said, as we get not in this work session, but in a regular meeting. So you can be thinking through this, the possible options for a motion, if you should still come to some conclusion, would be, and these are on particular order, you could make a motion to pass the request for the R110 and let that stand as is. That means whoever develops that ground could propose a development that had a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. You could deny the request to R110. What that would mean, what that would do, the implications of that are that the owner of the property and or developer could come back and represent a different request to the city council, different than R110. They could not come back for 1 year and request the R110, but could come back with a request for R112 or R120. That's another option. Another option you pass tonight would be an option for an R112. And again, that would set up the situation where the minimum lot size would be 12,000 square feet. You could then another option would be to pass a motion for an R120. The implications of that would be that the implications for that would be the minimum lot size would be 20,000 square feet. Those are the two options. If you still need more time, you could table it to another meeting if you needed more time to discuss it. The other thing lightly tossed around is called a development agreement. It can be attached to any one of those. My thoughts on that is a development agreement, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong on this. My thought would be a development agreement is something that a developer would come back and request, not necessarily something we put together and request of them. And so at this point, I don't see we ought to attach a development agreement to one of those zones. If a developer wanted, they could always come back and request a certain agreement for us to consider. Those are the options that I see to go along with that. Questions on that part so far? Okay. See, now let me open the floor then for this. Oh, first off, Daryl. Mr. Rupp.
Yes.
Let me tell you, I guess talk about the procedure for tonight. Tonight's procedure, this first 40 minutes we got left will be discussion of the council with no motion, just discussion, pro and con, back and forth, answer questions and thoughts. At 6 o'clock, we'll start a regular council meeting. The regular council meeting, then that would be the place where further discussion could happen and a motion could happen of one of those we mentioned. I've indicated to Mr. Rupp to give him some time to make some more comments. With that format, Mr. Rupp, would you like to make your comments now or at the first of the regular meeting?
So Mayor, could I
Yes.
interrupt? So you've had a hearing on this matter, and the
Right.
hearing was open and the hearing has been closed.
Okay.
And so really, this wasn't scheduled as a hearing. This
Okay.
was not scheduled as a hearing. So it is fair for the council to discuss this, but it is not fair for one side or another to be able to come in and present their arguments without the hearing being open again, so
Okay.
that you can actually get both sides of the issue. Otherwise, you'll get one side of the issue foreclosing the other side from giving their position, and you're going to get into problems if you do that. So this was not advertised as a hearing, am I right? This is
You're
not
correct. You're
Okay.
correct.
So, and you closed the hearing last meeting. You closed the hearing. You can open it again in your public meeting, if you wish to, because you did continue the issue, on, but this was not a scheduled hearing on the subject.
That is correct. Okay. So it is out of line for us to have Mr. Rupp make any comments then.
Right. Without the other
Can I ask a
side also
question?
being invited to do that.
May I ask a question?
Mayor?
Gary, may he ask a question?
Oh, sure. To me?
Well, yeah. So
Okay.
if I don't make a case, but want to make a proposal for a solution, is that acceptable in this meeting or in the city council meeting?
It is in the city council meeting. The city council can open the hearing again in the city council meeting because it was continued. The matter was continued on the agenda until the next regular meeting, I think, wasn't it, Denise?
Mhm.
It was continued to this.
Yeah, it
Okay,
was-
so if I understand correctly, I will have an opportunity to make a comment during the city council meeting, just not during the work session.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Would we have to open the public hearing for him to make a comment?
yes. Yeah, because both sides should have the opportunity to present. So
But
he would come back and he would
What's
present.
unfair about that though is none of the other public are in the meeting.
Yeah.
Everybody else just watches it by
YouTube,
YouTube.
because it wasn't on the agenda as a
Not on
continuation.
the agenda for public hearing.
Uh,
So if you open it up, nobody else is gonna be able to comment.
So the matter was continued, isn't that right?
We just table it.
Yeah,
And what-
the public
and what-
hearing was closed and then the council tabled it for further consideration.
And so what you're saying, technology wise, you can't open that up to anybody who would like to speak.
No, because none of them are registered.
Can they get registered? If
They
they're
won't know,
listening
they won't know they can, they won't know public hearings available.
I can go pull the roll that I had for the last public hearing and hurry and shoot each one of them an email stating that we're going to reopen the public hearing at 6 o'clock if anybody wants to join, and give them the Zoom link.
That would be appropriate. So when you table a matter, you don't have to re-advertise that it's going to be a public hearing. The city council can reopen a public hearing anytime.
Right.
You
Okay.
guys can do that. And so people have to be aware that you can do that. So it would be a good thing if you could send them out information on how they could join if you plan on opening the public hearing.
But let me ask council. Does the council see a need or interest in opening public hearing or leave it closed? You give me an idea what the council would like to do.
Mayor,
Tony?
I know there's several people out there that are aware that this is not a public hearing tonight.
Right, they are.
What
Or
bothers
they
me,
beyond right now.
what would bother me about reopening it would be those that Denise couldn't get a hold of, that have got other plans or doing other things, because as of this moment, they don't think it's a public hearing.
Other council response.
Yeah, I think that'd be a concern
Hey.
is there may be somebody that would participate in a hearing, but didn't have enough time to prepare for it or know about it. Apart from those that we can identify.
Eric,
So I was taking phone calls right up till almost this meeting started from people calling me to voice their opinion and concerns right before the meeting, knowing that they couldn't basically have the opportunity to have it in, be able to comment in the meeting. So, I'd say this, I think both sides have represented themselves very well. So that's kind of my thought on it.
okay. Jeffrey,
I kind of concur with Eric. I was on the phone right up till 5 o'clock talking to people about this, and I think I'm ready to move forward.
I'm in agreement also, Mayor.
okay. My mistake of error then, Gary helped clarify this. I'd indicated that the reps they could make a statement. And my understanding from what he said just a minute ago, they would like to make a different proposal. What format is appropriate if they should want to make a different proposal? Do we just table it again, let them make it individually? Or have them send that out in the next half hour by way of email? We can all read their proposal by email. What's the proper way to, if they should desire to put forth a different proposal,
Mhm.
what format's the best for us to receive that? Or just merely, we just deny the R110, then they can come back next week with a different proposal.
Mayor, you just answered my question, because that was exactly the question I was going to ask.
Mhm.
if we denied the R110 tonight, they could come back in 2 weeks with a different proposal, correct? It just couldn't be an R110.
Right. The only difference is
Yes.
you'd have to re-advertise,
Would you have to have another public hearing?
and you would. Mhm. It'd have to go to the planning commission. They'd have to be a recommendation, then it'd have to come back to you.
So it
So
has to go
you're-
back, it has to go
you're-
back to
you're
the
be-
planning commission.
Yes, you're better off to, if you want the RUPS to join in a public meeting and you do not feel that the other side has had an adequate notice that there's a public hearing going to take place or that the RUPS will be heard, then the best thing to do would, and I hate to ever, advise you to continue, but what you do is you table it again, and then you indicate to everybody that the RUPS are going to present another proposal. So we're going to open the public hearing again, and you're all invited to be here in 2 weeks.
Well, we don't have a meeting scheduled in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And
I mean, we can have a special meeting.
Mhm.
So if it was the next meeting, it would be January 8th, I believe.
I'm going to tell you that you could hold it tonight if you got enough people that you felt comfortable that there was enough notice that people could be involved, because there's no requirement that you re-advertise the public hearing. Once the item's on your agenda and you table it, you always have the right to reopen the public hearing. You always have the right. But to the point of most of you, what if people complain about the fact that they weren't told that this is going to be a public hearing? That's where you come into problems. It's not illegal for you to open it up again, but it may be something you don't want to do without all those people being notified that it was going to be opened up again, including the reps. And so, so I guess the decision would be whether or not you wanted to see if you could make contact with everyone before the public meeting tonight and indicate that you intend to reopen the public hearing and take input, or whether or not you'd like to continue it to another date, because you could continue it to another date without advertising in a special meeting, or you could just wait till the next regular meeting. Does that help? Probably not, but
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I created the problem. I apologize to everybody on the screen. I created the problem. And
So-
indicated up that they could make a statement. So I've created the problem that's here before us.
I have another thought. So the public hearing is to take all of the comment. It's not because people are voting, right?
Right.
One way or another. And so if somebody has something new that hasn't been said, which it sounds like all of the concerns have been voiced. There's been a lot of emails. All of the council members have been contacted. If there's something new to introduce, maybe the best thing to do is to have the council meeting doesn't start till 6. You can close the work session and RUPS can contact every council member, send them an email or just whatever that new piece of information, because everybody else has contacted each council person up until the meeting started. So if it's just I want to make sure that this new piece of information or this new something that wasn't brought up during the public hearing, there's still an opportunity before 6 o'clock to reach out. I don't know if that works or not.
I don't want to provide any new information. All I want to do is have the information that's been provided to date applied to a new proposal.
So what I hear Mr. Rupp saying is you'd like to make a new proposal, not new information, but a new proposal. Is that correct, Mr. Rupp?
That is correct.
Okay. So what's the best format to listen to his new proposal if he's got a different proposal than the R110?
well, how could there be a new proposal without different information?
And without a response from the other side, an opportunity to respond to a different proposal. I think that's the question that we're asking, is how do we get both sides informed so that maybe in the next half hour, we can get everybody on the line, or we can text or email everybody and say, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing up again for comment. Here's the address.
There was
But if
about 10 people that was registered for the public hearing off of my roster that I printed.
But if it's a new proposal, that starts that's different than, I misunderstood that part. I thought it was just more information, but if you're changing the proposal or redacting what the initial proposal was, I think that's a different process altogether. I don't think that's what I was trying to help with. So.
What about an option of a special meeting a week from, say, tomorrow? Then chance to advertise the hearing portion.
Well, if you just tabled it for a week from tomorrow, we wouldn't have to advertise again.
Well, I would say this to it, if there's going to be a new proposal or new information or the same information, but a new proposal, I'd love some time to study that. And I think all of my neighbors would like the same thing too, to be able to look at what's being proposed. I think we need to have some time to do that. I'd hate to rush it in a week.
Is the
Well, no, I
change
think-
significant
I
enough
think
that
the
you go back
public-
to the planning commission?
Don't know.
Daryl?
Nobody knows what it is.
Okay.
I think at this point in time, we ought to just kind of be done and let the Rubs come back and see what their new proposal is.
Gary, if they would like to present a new proposal,
Mhm.
would they have to go back through planning commission? Or could they merely present to city council at a later meeting?
Unless you deny the rezone tonight, you could continue or table the matter until a date certain, either a special meeting or the next regular meeting, and indicate to the public and to the RUPS that you will reopen the hearing and consider RUPS' new proposal, and the people will have the opportunity of being able to address that. And you can do that without going back to the planning commission. You can also send it back to the planning commission if you want to, if you thought it was that big a difference.
Good.
So
What would be a proper format for them to present that new proposal?
when you open the public hearing at the next meeting, they could present it there.
Could they present it beforehand, through emails or individual contact? So everybody knew what it was before the meeting, knew what the proposal was.
People can always contact the city council people anytime, the way the citizens have. You know, you've all experienced that
So
this last week.
the RUPS could contact every city council member and tell them what their new proposal is
They could.
without waiting for the next meeting.
Yes.
To be the first proposal, the first item.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
If a member of the council was interested in making a counter proposal to the council, would that be acceptable this evening?
Well,
Because there are options on the table according to the introduction by the mayor.
Any member of the council tonight can make any proposal they want within the jurisdiction that was laid out.
yes. Without opening the public hearing, any
So
council member
So
could
if
make.
the
a
council member
recommendation.
knows of your proposal, they could make that as a motion if they so desired.
Mhm.
You're muted.
The question is, what would the council like to do?
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go. The options as I see at this point, we would go ahead and proceed with the information we have, knowledge we have, that's one option. Another option would be if the reps want to come back with a new proposal, would be for the council to give them time to do that. You'd set that for first meeting in January or special meeting, it'd be an option. The other option would be if one council member happened to know what that proposal is, that council member could make that motion tonight. If one of the council members want to make a motion that would entertain the new proposal from the RUPS. But those are the options I see. We need to see kind of what the council members would like to do.
The council can even come up with its own proposal.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's still legitimate to do. Their own proposal, if you don't propose something different.
Here's what I'm sitting here thinking, just to maybe have a discussion is, I definitely know how the public feels about the R110 But if there was a proposal made to a different zone, I'd love to hear from them and say, yeah, we're okay with this one. We're not. Or, I mean, maybe they're going to come back with a mixed development, or we just don't know. So, I mean, does that make sense? Like, I think it needs to go back through where the public can see. If it was going to R120, that would be a whole different story. And then they could say, yeah, we're in favor of this. Yeah. Or
So
no,
Gary,
or-
Hey, Mayor,
Tony?
may I ask a question here?
Sure.
I think we talked about it the other night, you and I. I understand the RUPs have a concept out there. We're not, I realize we're not talking about a concept. We're talking about a zone change. But I think it's important that we remember as a city council that whatever we vote on and approve, if we vote on an R110, that doesn't mean that that concept has got to look exactly like the RUPs think it's going to look. There could be a developer come in and say, okay, it's an R110 zone that's been ratified by the city council. I'll slam 35 homes in there if I can. Now, is that, correct?
Mhm.
So I guess I think we need to be very careful what zone we approve, because who knows what developer is going to do what with that zone. So I think it's important that we consider that, and we sort of, yes, I trust the RUPs, and I know they have a plan, but that doesn't necessarily mean that developer has to follow that plan once that property is purchased. And at least that's as I see it. So I don't know if that's a point well taken or not, but I think it's important we remember that.
You're correct.
Gary, if we held a special meeting, say in 1 week, the council could make a decision at the end of the hearing, or they could table it again to the next possible date. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Either one of those.
So I would picture a special meeting that would lay the program out, give the opportunity to be heard from both sides. And if there wasn't enough, you'd clearly know from discussion whether there would be enough information to go forward, or table it till you've had time to look at it or consider it.
Any other discussions with council as far as what direction you want to go with this? Jeffrey or Jeff?
I think at this time, till we get further information, we need to play by the rules that govern us, and make sure everybody's going by those rules. If it were I don't know what the long-term goal is, or what the goal is, or the change for a different zone.
And I have no idea what the proposal is. It has to be one of the two zones, but it could carry with it what I would call a development agreement. For mixed whatever is a possibility. I have no idea what it would be. But the development agreements possibly could go along with the particular zone. Jeff, you got any thoughts? What direction you want to go with this tonight?
Well, I think we need to probably see what the new agreement that Mr. Up wants to present, and probably move the meeting.
Okay. Another input from the council. Would you prefer the first time you see this change in proposal to be at the start of the meeting next time in a public hearing? Or do you prefer to have Mr. Rupp reach out between now and then, so you've got an idea what the proposal is, so you can think about the proposal before the next meeting?
I would rather have an idea of what the proposal is before the meeting.
I also think that the public needs to know what the proposal is too.
Dave, Jeff?
Yes, I'd like to see it beforehand.
Yeah, I don't want to see it right before the meeting or at the meeting. I'd want my neighbors to see it too.
David or Jeffrey?
I mean, not unlike our consideration right today, we had information ahead of the meeting, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I would prefer a heads up.
We don't ever get our packets the night of. I mean, we got a couple of days to study it before we
Right.
get them.
They'd have to be at least in the pack the week before. Denise is going to get those out before, so have to at least be in your packets. I guess I'd be up to the reps whether they wanted to contact you individually or just put the information in the packet. So Gary, to help clarify, I think you mentioned this a minute ago, if the council tonight should table this until the next meeting, whether they set up a special and a regular one, at that point, then the reps could put forth a new proposal and Denise could put it out in the packets. Is that correct?
Okay, so the new proposal would have to come after you've opened the public hearing.
Right.
So what you do tonight is you would make a motion to open the public hearing so you could accept new information over the next week or 2 weeks or whatever until your next meeting. And so the information that the reps give could go out to, send into the city, could go out to the neighbors, and the neighbors could send their comments back if you left the hearing or the public hearing open tonight, if you opened it up and allowed individuals to.
Would we have to open it again, or since we just continue the meetings, is it still basically potentially we could open it? Since they continue.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to open it again. What I would do is at the end of your meeting tonight, I'd make a motion to open the public hearing so you can accept additional information from the reps or the neighbors or whoever. And that additional information will go out or can be in the packet for next week or next time you meet. You
And
wouldn't
I
have to-
misspoke. The meeting in January would be the 12th.
Mhm.
That's the first meeting in January.
Okay.
So Gary, can I direct a question to you,
Sure.
if I may? And hopefully you can follow my logic here. So we're not talking about a concept tonight. We're trying to we're talking about a zone change.
Mhm.
So when we talk about a new proposal,
Mhm.
in order for it really to make any difference, that proposal would almost need to be the reps proposing another zone change. Because here's where I'm going with this. If the reps intend on selling the property to a developer, and whatever zone we eventually designate, I guess what I'm saying is at that point in time, the horse is a little bit out of the barn, because that new developer or whoever the reps sell to, if that's their intention, they really don't have to use that concept that's handed to them by the reps. They could do whatever they wanted. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
That's
So,
correct.
so when we talk about the reps bringing us a new proposal, in my mind, the new proposal almost has to ask for a different zone change. Because anyway, that's kind of as I see it, because if it doesn't ask for a different zone change and it's just another proposal on R110, it's still the concept that's developed by the reps, and the developer could change that if they wanted to, if they purchased that property. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
So
That's
from what Tony's saying, the only available thing would be an R112 or an R120 if they're just going to propose a zone change. That's the only thing they could present differently, unless they want to put some other restriction on, and that would be called a development agreement. They'd have to put together a full development agreement, not just a concept idea. Is that, Tony, is that kind of what you're saying?
that's
If tonight, all we can do is just R112, R120, if they should come back with a proposal, something in between those, that doesn't exist in the ordinance. It's either got to be an R112 or R120.
now
If they
that,
have some different thoughts and ideas they want to incorporate, that would have to come back and correct me, Gary, that would have to come back in the form of a development agreement. So if they want to have a mix something or whatever, that would have to be a development agreement And that would have to then be attached to the property and attached to the property. And then, Tony, that whoever bought the ground, that would be attached to the property if it was actual development agreement.
And let me,
Just as zone attaches doesn't lock an owner into anything, but a development agreement, correct me, Gary, if there's a development agreement in place for whatever, then that's attached to the land and that would be still valid with whoever bought the ground. Is that correct, Gary? Or is that wrong?
It would, typically you'd wait, typically the difficulty here is that you're being asked simply for a rezone of the property.
Right, that's all.
And you do not have a developer in front of you. You have a property owner who has some ideas as to how the property might be developed, but you don't have a developer that is in front of you with an actual proposal ready to move forward. And so it's really, really tough. You remember how many weeks and months we spent on things like the Mahogany Ridge, you know, some of the other subdivisions in town where we've had a development agreement, even just as something as simple as the most recent one that we, you know, where you had to have a temporary turnaround at the end. The difficulty is without having an actual application on the table, it's really tough to come up with, for example, a mix of densities, you know, so that you have so many, maybe 12,000 square foot lots and so many 13s and so many 14s and so many 15s until you get a developer in that says, here's what I'm going to do. And then you write a development agreement with him. You put your zoning in place. If it's, for example, 12,000 square foot, he could, in a development agreement, if it's R112, the developer is allowed to build 12,000 square foot lots, but he could agree to build on average, you know, something larger, kind of like what happened to the subdivision, you know, the one that is zoned R18 and has acre lots in it right now. You know, you could do something like that, but really the time for a development agreement, it's really tough to imagine what a development will look like if you're not building it or so that's the reason it's tough. That's the reason you're having a tough time is because, and that's the reason RUPs are having a tough time is because they're not going to build it right now. You know, they're not the developer and they're wanting to rezone it, which they have a right to do. And that rezoning will change the value of the property. And of course, they're wanting the highest value on the property, which is higher density, usually. And what the city's saying is, we're going to consider what the citizens want. Maybe we won't zone at the higher density, but if you want something in between 12 and 20, you're probably going to have to wait till development comes in to put together a development agreement. And so whoever comes in is going to have a 20,000 square or a right to 20,000 square foot lots or 12,000 square foot lots at a minimum or at a maximum or a minimum, sorry, minimum.
Hey,
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Mayor,
hey, I got an idea to get us out of this. Tonight, since it's on the table for a R110, if we denied the R110 next week, that'd give Daryl the ability to come back with the next meeting. Daryl would come back with a different proposal, correct?
Yeah, he'd have to go back through the planning commission with that different.
Oh, all the way through the planning commission?
Yeah.
Mayor,
That's the difference.
So
Mayor, man.
I don't think we want to make him do that. Go ahead, Tony.
I just wanted to clarify one thing. With what I said, I'm not opposed to hearing RUP's proposal. I didn't want to make it seem like I wasn't willing to hear it. I'm willing to hear it, but
What I hear the council say, we're all willing to hear it and all want to hear it and all interested in postponing and waiting till another meeting so we can hear it. But I guess what I'm also starting to hear and understand is if they propose a mixed use of some kind, that really can't be done without a development agreement. The only thing can be proposed is zone R112, R120, or R110. That's all that can be proposed. If it happened to be a mixed use of some kind, or an average lot of size of some kind, or minimum lot size, or whatever, those kind of things would have to be in a development agreement. is what I'm trying to understand. And
Here's what I'd say to that too. I mean, this is going to lengthen out the process, but in that, if it was a mixed development or if it was a R112 or R120, I know this is going to be a longer process, but I'd rather have it run back through the planning commission to have them review it, have them look at it again, have the neighborhood look at it, and do it that way. I think it would clean up a lot of stuff.
even so, at the end of the day, yeah, unless there's a development agreement, your only options are R110, R112, R120. Those are the only three options. Mixed use is not an option unless it's in a development agreement. Now, correct me, Gary, if I'm wrong. That's the way I'm hearing what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And you really don't have a development before you right now.
Could you, Gary, could you have a development agreement in place before you made the zone change?
Yes, at the same time as the zone change, you could put a development agreement in place. But usually what you have is you have a developer who has really thought this through and knows where everything's going to go. And you've had the benefit of them presenting a conceptual plan that really works. And that's why you put that into place. You remember up in Mahogany Ridge, we went and designated this area for this certain zoning and this area for this certain zoning. And they came to us with a plan where the street sizes actually worked and the the length of the streets worked and the utilities worked and that type of thing. And so we put that development agreement in place at the same time we rezoned that property up there. I don't know if you remember that, but I'm not saying that's the best development in the world to look to, but it's the same principle that when you got a developer that's ready to come in and develop, they can really show you how they could, for example, combine those densities and maybe have, if it was zoned R112, come in and say, here's my plan. The majority of these lots are R112, but 30% of them are 20,000 square feet. And 60% of them are R112. And so you got a combination of the two, and here's how I'd fit them all in, and here's what I'd do. That's what a development agreement does. And that's the reason it is good to bring, at the same time you bring the zoning into play, but only if you know what you're going to do. Because if you get a development agreement in play and you put the zoning in place and the development agreement doesn't work because the street frontages aren't the right size and the streets aren't in the right place and those types of things happen, then you're kind of stuck. You've got essentially then they're entitled to build whatever. They put themselves in a very, very bad situation if they couldn't build what they had determined to build through the development agreement.
So how binding is that development agreement?
Very. Yeah, very. And they'd have to come back. Typically what happens when this type of thing happens is they come back again and again and again with every new developer that comes in. And the new developer has a concept and he wants to put that concept in place. And then the next developer, if that doesn't work, the next developer comes in, tries to put a concept in place. And each time you're faced with the obligation to try and amend the development agreement. Whereas if you put the zoning in place, they pretty much know what they've got. And then a developer comes in and says, let me try this. And the developer can essentially work within the boundaries that the zone allows him to work. Does that make sense? Or?
Well, it's back to what I said a while ago. If we hypothetically zoned this an R110, even though the RUPS had a proposal, that doesn't preclude the possibility that somebody else could come in as the developer and throw that proposal right out the window.
Yeah, unless it was done by development agreement. But
unless it's done by development agreement, right?
What I'm hearing right now is that R1, both the planning commission and the city council both have rejected R110 in your own way. And so it's something over R110. It's either R112 or R120. And the planning commission invited the RUPS to come back with an R112 or an R120, but the RUPS chose to come back with an R110 again and said, no, we want to go ahead and push this forward. I was listening to the hearing, and that was kind of the sentiment that we got. So I think the tough thing is you're going to have to make a decision at some point. R112, if a developer comes in and he has a subdivision that is a nice R112, it has some lots that are 12,000 square foot, some lots that are, larger than that. There's definitely got to be a lot of work on, because of the street design and the configuration of the land. There's not going to be that many lots out there, not as many as, the surrounding neighbors think there might be, or even the RUPs maybe think there will be, because it's tough to get that configuration with the shape of the land that you've got. So I think the council just needs to look at it and forget the parties involved and just say, what should this piece of land be? What do we want a developer when he comes in to try and develop at? And then it's either going to be R112 or R120. Does that make sense?
It does.
Can I add on to that, Gary? So the role is different from planning commission to city council. So the planning commission, it's not that they are for or against. Their job is to just say, does this fit within our ordinance, which it does, just
Very
like
good.
R12 and R120 does. And that's where they really struggled through that process. But some of that was not to decide what is the best use. Their job's to say, does it fit? Is this an allowable use? Which it did. And they kind of struggled through that process. So they didn't oppose R110. They just had a hard time understanding that their decision-making was does it fit? And it does, it fits. So really there's only 3 options on the table. It's R110, 112, or 120. You don't have to decide the total outcome tonight. You have a proposal that could be yes or no on R110, up or down, and that doesn't limit, that decision tonight doesn't necessarily impact R112 or 120. That's yet to be determined. And R110 isn't totally off the table. It's only off the table for a year. So as you go through that process, it's painful, but it really simplifies, not jumping ahead and saying, I'm trying to envision what this is going to look like and who the developer is going to be and what's the best outcome, in the long term. It's simply just a process of here's what's proposed, yes or no. Try again, yes or no.
Could be that simple.
Or if you know what you want, then you can also say, nope, this is exactly, and you might all be divided on that, right? But you don't actually have to jump to the conclusion that the end decision all in one night. So anyway, that's just.
Okay, it's time to close public hearing. We need to go to the regular city council meeting. So I will close public hearing, adjourn the public hearing, and then we need to have you log off and log back on. Is that correct, Denise? You need to
Not the
log
Close
off.
the
public
work-
hearing, the work session.
Close the work
I'm sorry,
session.
work session. Excuse me, wrong verbiage. I'm gonna close the work session.
Mhm.
Work session closed. We'll go to the regular session. Thank you, Ty.